Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Easter to those who are Christian and the rest of you. It's a beautiful Sunday out there. I only have 20 minutes, so I'm going to keep it short and sweet for you. But I now lean heavily into Buddhism. I'm not specifically a Buddhist. I've actually never taken refuge before because, again, I am very weary of commitment to any organized groups. This is my personal thing, but it's been through my experience that I've always kind of tread lightly in those places. But I did a lot of self-study. I have received teachings from certain Buddhist masters. One who just passed, Norbu, who is the Dzog Che lineage holder, which is mostly the Buddhism which I practice, which is Tibetan Vajrayana Buddhism. And some Bon, of course, which was pre-Buddhism in Tibet. But anyway, my journey did not start there. My mom's from Okinawa. My dad's Croatian and Serbian. He was a Green Beret Nam. Sure. Yeah, she was Green Beret Nam. They came. I was born in '73. I was raised as a Lutheran. My grandparents were Lutheran. They were both Eastern European descent, Croatian, Serbian. So we were raised Lutheran, and I went to church every Sunday. Went to Sunday school. Got confirmed, but there was always something that didn't sit right with me with that particular thing. There was definitely a lot of things that made a lot of sense to me, but there was a lot of things in there that did not add up to me. And so when I was able to decide for myself, I chose not to follow that path. And as I became a teenager, I was a punk kid and the music and stuff, and I found, paganism and the occult, what I mean? And it was fascinating to me. I already loved sci-fi and fantasy. It was a natural progression there. And I practiced that for a while, and I just found, and again, I'm not saying anything for any particular, but my personal experience was it was very limiting, and it really didn't produce results as I was envisioning it would. And I think a lot of people have had that issue because that's not really what that's about. That's what the fantasy of it is about, but the reality is much more based in animism and nature worship. You know what I mean? The Taoists are the Asian version of that. You know what I mean? They recognize these patterns in nature and just realize that the more in harmony they live with them, the better, less they would suffer, and the better quality of life they would have. As far as Taoism, Taoism definitely later became entwined with Buddhism in certain parts of China and stuff. So there's definitely sects that kind of lean into both sides of that teaching. So again, not to get off track, but I went from the pagan stuff. I found Crowley, and my whole idea about magic and ceremonial magic changed from that. It's very interesting, but again, very limiting in what I thought it would actually produce as a result. And then I was really good friends with a kid in high school who was out teaching on the reservation English in the summers when he was off school, and he made friends with the group who came to do a fancy dancing college tour. And there was a gentleman with them named Vernon Moves Camp. Okay, and he was really my first spiritual or guiding teacher. I don't want to say he wasn't a shaman or anything. He was just an elder Lakota that had a lot of knowledge, was very revered in his group. His name was Vernon Moves Camp. He was a tribal lawyer, but among other things. But we spent the whole week with him. And this was a time where I was certainly enjoying myself a lot, doing things I probably shouldn't be doing. And he hung out with us and did a lot of that stuff with us. And the one thing that always impressed me about him was no matter what we were doing, he never changed his demeanor at all. He was always the same. He barely spoke, and he just kind of laughed at us all the time. Do you know what I mean? And I was really into native culture at the time. So I asked them all the time, are you the Heoka, which is their trickster god? Because I thought he was there screwing with us the whole time. You know what I mean? And I just kept bugging him all week. And at the end of the week, we were going to take him home. And I'm like, come on, Vernon, just tell me, you're all the Heoka, right? And then his face got real serious, and I got kind of like taken aback, and he pulled me in really close and he said, no, you are. And that was the first time I got teaching, and that really floored me to the ground. I was like, whoa, that. I wasn't ready for that. So that my whole path changed because of that one interaction with this guy. And so I really started to seriously look and try to figure out why I'm here and what this all means. And that took me down crazy roads, but also wanting to more understand my own cultural heritage and my obsession with art. That's where Hinduism and Buddhism kind of came in at the same time. And I started reading the Vedas. I started reading the Dhammapada. I was still reading a lot of native stuff like Black Elk Speaks and stuff. And again, I discovered my hero, Joseph Campbell. And that really um, made me think outside the box for the first time, and not look specifically in one direction for truth or understanding, but try to take whatever I thought made sense and use that and incorporate it into my own beliefs. As time progressed on, what I was learning, my experience took me more and more into Buddhism because everything seemed to be overcomplicating everything. And there was too much, not that I don't appreciate ritual stuff, but it's just like crazy at some point, you know what I mean? And then I heard the Dalai Lama say something really amazing. He was quoted, but he said, if you want to be a good Buddhist, all you have to do is be mindful and compassionate. That's it. All that other stuff is great. But if you don't have that, then it doesn't mean anything. You know what I mean? That's the root of all of it, right? So I'm overcomplicating this. So Dzog Che is where Zen Buddhism came from. So it was more like pushing a lot of the esoteric practices and stuff away and really just sitting down and doing directly pointing the mind at itself. That's where I started to find real progress in my practice. That's what made me become more of a devout Buddhist, because I could just cut all this other stuff out and just really focus on the nature of my mind and sit with myself and just kind of go through it. And, the first couple of years of that, I didn't achieve any kind of empty mind state. But what did happen was I got to look back on my life and my experiences and kind of piece together how I got to where I was. You know what I mean? And that kind of understanding, that being able to put that, helps you forgive yourself and let go for the mistakes that you made. And once you learn to forgive yourself, forgiving other people becomes really easy. You know what I mean? Because and it's saying you forgive yourself is one thing, but really doing it, that's a whole other animal. And I'm telling you from experience, because I thought I forgave myself until I really sat down and started to do the work and really understood how I got to where I was. That was the path for me to start to be able to move forward with my practice and become more serious of a Buddhist and a better human being, period. I mean, that's really what my goal is. My goal isn't to be a great Buddhist, is to be a good human being first. You know what I mean? I'm a human being first, I'm a Buddhist second. And that's the whole thing that I think we're having, this whole problem that's happening right now, is because people just can't get that into their head. You're a human being before you're an American, before you're Jewish, before anything. You're a human being before you're born human. And that's what's important. That's what we need to focus on. That's what needs to be recognized the whole time. The most valuable commodity on this planet is us, because without us, none of this has any value. Value exists because we exist. You know what I mean? And again, what Buddhism does is makes a very clear distinction of saying that suffering happens regardless of what we do. And when we say suffering, people get that up like it's punishment. It's not. Suffering is a teacher. You know what I mean? You get hungry because you have to eat to survive. And it may feel uncomfortable, but that's making you go out and get something to eat. Because if you were just in bliss all the time, you would just sit there and do nothing, and nothing would happen, right? Of course. So why I think Buddhism is really the philosophy of Buddhism is really important now. Most importantly is mindfulness, because we can't control what happens to us 99% of the time, but we can control how we react to things and how we engage them. And that's what mindfulness practice does. And having compassion for yourself makes it much easier to be mindful. You know what I mean? That's it. You're a human being first. Remember, human beings screw up. They make mistakes. You make bad choices. It's what you do next that makes the difference, right? So that's pretty much it. So, I mean, do anybody have experience with Buddhism or practice Buddhism at all? Yes. Yeah, so, when I gave the talk at Awaken, I kind of explained briefly the whole way Buddha became, quote unquote, enlightened in the middle path. And I will touch on that. So I really do believe the middle path is the way towards self-liberation. But the only person can tell you what the middle path is you. Yeah. I certainly, that's why I really don't I would never proclaim myself to be a guru or shaman or any of that stuff, because those aren't titles you give to yourself. They're bestowed upon you. Do you know what I mean? Because of what you do and how you act. And that's it. People want to refer that to me, that's fine, but I don't say that to myself. And I'll be very quick to correct them. If you want to see me that way, that's fine, but I'm not telling you that's what I am. I'm just a guy who, somewhere along the line woke up enough they kind of start paying attention to what he was doing, how he was interacting with the world. He learned a lot about himself. And hopefully some of those stories or the experiences I have will help other people, will be a tool for them to use to find their own. That's all I hope to do. I hope that the example that I set inspires other people to do the same thing. That's it. Because human beings generally don't like to be told what to do. But if they make a choice for themselves and they're inspired by what they see, that's much more meaningful and deeper of teaching. Absolutely. Yeah. Are we doing on time? We good? So here, sure. I'm going to share this because I think it's important what's happening right now. I'm going to speak about violence. So we are experiencing extreme violence right now, largely unnecessary. It's 2026. I mean, reason and logic should be ruling the day right now. It's been 5,000 years out of tribal warfare. I mean, I think it's really about time we let that stuff go. I will refrain from cursing. I want to really that. But this is how one of the stories I think Buddhism really addresses this, because I believe that violence is absolutely the last action to be taken. But compassion comes in infinite forms, and one of them is a sword, unfortunately. But if you're defending the lives of others and the ability for others to liberate themselves, then that's a sacrifice that an individual can make at that time. The story was told was this: there's a temple being sacked, and this army is just slaughtering everybody that's in there. And one of the monks had gotten out early. He's up on the hill, and he sees the general of the army, and at his feet is a bow and arrow. Now he knows if he picks up that bow and arrow and kills that guy, he's never going to become enlightened because he took a life. But if he kills that guy, all those people that are left down in that thing could be freed and live and be able to become enlightened. So he took the bow, grew the string back, and shot the general and killed him and saved the lives of all those people, and was immediately granted enlightenment because he gave and sacrificed the one thing he spent his whole life trying to achieve in order to achieve to save that for other people. So take that as a lesson, world. That's it's just something that I say to guys all the time. I grew up in a very misogynistic and manly, you got to be a man thing. It takes so much more courage and strength to know when to put your sword down and when to pick it up. And if you don't believe that's the truth, you are very sadly mistaken, and you will probably die by that sword, unfortunately. So there's some Buddhist truth for you. Happy Easter.